working on some television issues, and we're set and ready to go. I want to acknowledge that the warrant has been properly posted, and I'd ask at this time that you rise for the pledge, and I'd like to introduce the individuals who are leading us in the pledge this morning. They are 8th grade students at Hampton Academy: Jacob Smith, Devin LaRoche, Michael Moser, Caitlin Barbieri, Cooper Penfield, and Kate Casaza. And you'll see them throughout the day, and I'll describe more of what their efforts are after the pledge. Students?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce the officials on the stage this morning. Dick Nichols, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen; Bill Lally, Jerry Zanoy, Rick Griffin, and Michael Pierce, constituting the Board of Selectmen. Also with us this morning, Town Clerk Jane Marzinzik, Town Attorney Mark Gerald, Town Attorney Wanda Robertson, Town Manager Fred Welch. The Chairman of the Budget Committee, I believe I saw her. She's in the audience, Eileen Latimer. Finance Director Michael Schwotzer, over on the far side of the stage. Administrative Assistant Christina Osman, who's helping with any amendments today. Deputy Town Clerk Shirley Doheny. Supervisors of the checklist are in the hallway, and if you haven't checked in, you need to check in if you're a Hampton resident and you intend to vote today. The supervisors are Arlene Andriozzi, Davina Larrabee, and Barbara Renault. Assisting the supervisors this morning in checking in voters are Martha Williams and Teresa Ryan. Assisting the moderator today are Senator Nancy Stiles, Dennis Kilroy, Nathan Page, Darrell Mosier, and Glenn Eastman. As you came in this morning, you likely saw that there is coffee and food in the hall, and lunch will be available as well, all as part of a fundraising effort by 8th graders. Those 8th graders who did the pledge for us this morning are assisting. They are going to New York City. Last year, Hampton Academy 8th graders went on a school trip. It was a great success, and this year's 8th grade class is fundraising in an effort so that they can have that same experience. So I hope you will support their efforts by buying coffee and other food throughout the day. I believe there's also some baskets that they're having a raffle, so I encourage you to support their efforts. Our business today. Today's session is to explain, discuss, debate, and possibly amend the 41 articles set forth on the warrant, with the exception of those warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law, for example, the zoning articles. It is not necessary to vote these articles onto the ballot. All 41 will appear on the March 13th ballot. Our work today is to determine the wording of those articles, to determine how those articles will appear on the ballot. Final action will come on March 13th at the Winnicott Cafeteria, where voting will be conducted from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Today's rules. We will proceed one article at a time. I will read the article. After the article has been moved and seconded for discussion, I will recognize the proponent of the article first and then open the article for discussion by the Assembly. I will recognize a new speaker on an article before returning to someone who has already spoken on the article, with the exception that the proponent of the article will be permitted to answer questions or offer further details regarding the purpose of the article in response to a question or opinion as appropriate. All questions should be directed to the moderator. If you wish to speak, please wait to be recognized by the moderator and speak into the microphone. And this is critical to make sure that your remarks are carried by the cable broadcast. The Channel 22 technicians can assist those who require hearing assistance or have difficulty with the microphones. We will deal with only one amendment at a time. The amendments must be in writing. We have paper on the stage that you can make use of. After the amendment has been moved and seconded, please give that written amendment to me so that I can have it and the town clerk can have it as well. Please focus on the content of the amendment or the article and refrain from personal comments. The moderator will revoke recognition of any speaker who speaks or acts in an abusive or disruptive manner, and the moderator will also revoke recognition of any speaker who refuses to keep his or her comments relevant to the article under consideration or is needlessly repetitive. Non-residents will be allowed to speak on the affirmative vote of the meeting. If an issue arises during the meeting that is not covered by these rules, I intend to use fairness and majority rule as guiding principles with due consideration for the minority's right to be heard. This is your meeting, and as a result, the determinations of the moderator may be overruled. Voting will be conducted by voice, hand, or standing vote as appropriate. 5 voters may make a request in writing prior to a vote that the vote be taken by secret written ballot. After the vote has been declared and before any other business has begun, any non-ballot vote may be questioned by 7 voters, and the vote shall be retaken by a secret yes/no ballot. Reconsideration of votes previously taken may be restricted at any time during the meeting by an affirmative vote of the meeting. I'd ask that you turn off all cell phones while the meeting is in session. If you need to have a conversation, we have a TV set up in the hallway so that you can have that conversation without disrupting the meeting and also keep pace with our work. Per the state fire code, please note the location of the exits. If the fire alarm activates, please leave the building by the nearest exit and assist anyone that needs help and assemble in front of the SAU 21 building. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to allow non-resident staff of the town of Hampton to speak during the meeting, to answer questions, and to provide information regarding a warrant article, specifically the following individuals: Town Manager Fred Welch, Town Attorneys Mark Gerald and Wanda Robertson, Building Inspector Kevin Schultz, Finance Director Mike Schwozer, Recreation and Parks Director Diana Martin, the Assessor Ed Tinker, Town Planner Jamie Steffen, Administrative Assistant Christina Osman, Public Works Director Keith Noyes, and the Lane Library Director Amanda Cooper. I have a motion in that regard. Mr. Nichols moving. Do I have a second? Mr. Lally second. All those in favor of letting those non-resident town employees participate in the meeting, raise your hand. Down hands. Any opposed? Those non-residents will be able to participate throughout this meeting. Article 1. In past years, we've gone through a drawing to fix the order that candidates will appear on the ballot because of change in the law. RSA 656 5A, that order is now determined per a formula set out in that statute. So I'm going to read the candidates for the various offices, and the way that I read them is the way that they will appear on the March 13th ballot. For selectmen, we have 2 positions available. There are 5 candidates as follows: Jerry Zanoy, Philip Bean, Dustin Marzinzik, Ben Moore, Mary Louise Woolsey. Tax collector, 1 position, 1 candidate, Donna Bennett. Moderator, 1 position, 1 candidate, Robert Casaza. Supervisor of the checklist, 1 position, 1 candidate, Barbara Renaud. Trustee of the trust funds, 2 positions, 2 candidates, John Sovich, Norman Silberdick. Library trustee, 2 positions, 3 candidates, Richard Lasky, Mark Hughes, Sonny Kravitz. Planning board, 2 positions, 3 candidates, Mark Olson, Tracy Emmerich, Art Moody. Cemetery trustee, 1 position, 1 candidate, Thomas Harrington. Budget committee, 4 positions, 5 candidates, Richard Rainier, Pat Collins, Joe Grabowski, Brian Lapham, Michael Pluck. Budget committee, 1 position, 2 candidates, Deandra Samphy, Victor DeMarco. Zoning board, 2 positions, 2 candidates, Bill O'Brien, Vic Lassard. Those are the positions that will appear on Article 1 on the March 13th ballot. Article 2. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment Number 1 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Hampton Zoning Ordinance as follows? Amend Article 1 General, Section 1.5, Planning Board Site Plan Review, to modify the wording to comply with new state laws, RSA 674-39, on vested rights relative to approval of site plans. I'll entertain a motion to open discussion on Article 2. I have a motion to open discussion on Article 2. Moved by Ms. Woolsey. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Pluff. I'd like to recognize the chairman of the Planning Board, Fran McMahon, to give us some information on Article 2.
Fran McMahon, 4 Ash Street, Chairman of the Planning Board. Basically, what this article does is proposes to bring our regulations in compliance with a recent change in the state law. Right now, when we do site plan approval, our regulation talks about a 2-year window. At the end of 2 years, our approval terminates. The new state law extends that period to 5 years, and that was passed in the last session of the General Assembly. I think it was primarily in response to the general economic conditions in the state, so that a developer gets a longer period to maintain his approval. That was unanimously endorsed by the Planning Board. So,
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Anyone else wishing to be heard on Article 2? Seeing none, Article 2 will appear on the ballot as printed. Article 3, are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 2 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Hampton zoning ordinance as follows? Amend Article 3, Use Regulations, Section 3.26, to modify the wording to replace the use regulation of garage and motor vehicle repair and service shop, and to delete parking lots from the use category, and to revise the definition of filling station to include the words, quote, and dispensing, end quote, after the word, quote, sale, end quote, electricity or other alternative fuel, end quote, after the words, quote, diesel oil, end quote, and Section 3.26A to permit parking lots and or parking areas in the RCS zoning district with site plan approval by the Planning Board. I'll entertain a motion to open discussion on Article 3. Moved by Mr. Pierce. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Zanoy. Mr. McMahon, Chairman of the Planning Board, on Article 3.
again, this is one that we the board, picked up some problems in our regulation as it presently existed, and decided it would be a good time to try and clean it up. One is our regulation speaks to fuels as gasoline and diesel fuel, and clearly in the current world, those things are broadening to electricity and other types of fuels that may already exist and may exist in the future. So we've broadened our language to include that and allow that use as a right. The second thing as part of this amendment was that in the RCS district right now, parking lots are not permitted, and I think that was just an oversight. So we're proposing to permit those with site plan approval in that particular zoning district.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Anyone else wishing to be heard on Article 3? Yes, sir. Yes.
Can I ask a question to have those people that are talking back there carry on their conversation outside?
Certainly.
Very annoying.
Yeah, there's been a request in the audience, and if I may have to have an assistant moderator. If those folks up on the back could move the conversation, Mr. Rice and others. If you folks, it's disruptive to the meeting. If you could carry on that conversation outside. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Alec DeRoche. I'm a resident of the city of Manchester, but I'm a taxpayer here in Hampton, New Hampshire.
All right, so I've got to stop you right there. As not a resident, I'll take a motion, take a vote. Mr. Nichols and Mr. Griffin, all those in favor of allowing a non-resident to speak? Down hands. Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As to the Article 3, Article 3 should really be two different articles, actually two different articles, because the parking lot section doesn't fit in with the use and regulation. It's kind of hidden in the bottom of the article that we're going to allow parking lots in residential areas. I currently live in RCS and have a first-hand experience with an illegal parking lot. I've witnessed sex acts, drug use, drinking, urinating, fighting, urging constant calls to the Hampton Police Department. Please don't allow this article to be approved as written. I'd like it sectioned out. And I ask everybody, would you like a parking lot in your backyard? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Steve Lytle of Riverview Terrace. I'd also like permission to speak. I'm a non-resident.
All those in favor of letting this gentleman speak to the article, raise your hands, down hands. Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
Also, I'm in opposition of 326C. I believe it should also be its own amendment. The voters should know that, again, I've witnessed the same, an illegal parking lot tucked into a residential area. It should be its own article if it's going to go to vote. It's a very important issue as buildings are torn down, as buildings burn down and parking lots are cleared in these residential areas. That just opens the door for anyone to have a parking lot next door to them. So again, the same activity, as Darren had mentioned, becomes a breeding ground for illegal activity. I have logs to the Hampton Police Department that show the amount of illegal activity that took place of folks that were urinating, whether it's beach patrons or bar patrons at night. Folks that have illegal drug activity, sex activity taking place in the parking lot in broad daylight in front of all our kids. And again, we live in the residential area. Our kids, our families are all witness to the activity that takes place in the parking lot. So again, we've had the other issue with the parking lot. When you tuck these parking lots into dead-end roads as part of the RS, this section of residential area, most of the streets are dead ends, so you have all this traffic going down a dead-end street trying to find parking in these, these soon-to-be parking lots or illegal parking lots, or whatever you want to call them, temporary parking lots. And the traffic when the parking lots are full, so there's no sidewalks on our particular road on Riverview Terrace. There's no sidewalks, so people coming out of these parking lots, they have nowhere to walk. They have to walk down the middle of the road. When they come out of there, they have nowhere to turn. They end up turning around in our yards and our houses. They've crashed into our houses and our yards. So again, I'd really seriously like the voters to take a close look at 326C. And again, I think it just opens the door. It sets a precedent for these parking lots to go in eventually any residential areas. And, I'd like the voters to vote no on that. But appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just as a point to address comments of the first gentleman, this is a non-amendable warrant article, so the language will stay as it's printed, and the opportunity to vote yes or no will be there for all on March 13th. Mr. McGann, do you have any further comment on Article 3?
Yeah, just a point that it is with site plan approval. So the planning board is very sensitive to the parking issue at the beach and how those are proposed and how they're operated. So that's not a particularly new issue to the board. And as I say, we're very sensitive to that issue and have been for a long time.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Anyone else wishing to be heard on Article 3?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Griffin.
I just would like to say that I'm on the planning board, and we hear things like this quite often. Everybody's sensitive to that. But one thing that happens is, anyone that lives on Ocean Boulevard has people all summer long ducking in to urinate in their backyard, or more than that. I mean, these things happen all the time. It's basically part of living in Hampton, unfortunately. It's hard, these type of things are hard to control. I mean, just last night I came home, and I live next to Little Jack's, and there were people doing something, drugs or sex or whatever, in the parking lot there. And I kind of just took a look, rode by them a few times, and this is just what happens in Hampton. It not only happens in Hampton Beach, it happens all up in the town of Hampton, too. Anyone that has a restaurant, they have people doing these things that just pull off the street. They're not necessarily even, customers of these establishments. So this is just something that happens, and it's something that all you can do is really call the police, or like what I did last night, I made a point of going out there. The people were there for 15 minutes, and they wouldn't leave. So this is not anything that's new, and the planning board has gone out of its way to try to do the best we can to make sure these things don't happen and offer some protection.
Thank you. I think the commentary of the gentleman here is that the proposed use, potential use of parking lots, they've witnessed facilitating this activity in a residential zone, so they've expressed their opposition to that, notwithstanding other social issues. And
I'd just like a follow-up to what the gentleman just said in reference the things, the parking lots that are in the business areas, they have a lot of police activities. The parking lots that are tucked into the residential areas, they don't have that police activities. I don't know if the taxpayers are willing to add additional police presence, and I can tell you from our own experience that the Hampton Police, we met with the Hampton Police regarding this one particular parking lot, and Hampton Police had to put on 3 or 4 different officers to monitor that parking lot throughout the night, as well as throughout the day, the night, as well as closing. So again, it's a burden to the taxpayers to have to fund additional resources to have the Hampton Police, because again, these parking lots are out of the way. It's not where, you know, the parking lots are on Ocean Boulevard. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yeah, I saw Mr. Zanoy. Mr. Zanoy, did you want to have a comment?
I don't believe that this subject came up in a hearing. I think it was just an administrative paper change that took place, changing the use of the parking lot. Is that right, sir?
Yes.
So the public never really heard this, you know, and if it was on the agenda and spoken to, I'd feel much better today than I do. You know, but the way it was handled, because they had already been seen as being a parking lot, if you will, they made a change of use, administratively speaking, without really hearing it at the planning board, and that is how that went down.
Mr. Griffin? Yes, sir.
I would just like to say that I think I'm familiar with who this gentleman is talking about, what establishment, and I just want to point out that you may look at these things and think that those are police that the taxpayers are paying for, but they're not. The establishment themselves are paying for these police, at least where he's talking about. When we hear of issues going on, these different establishments have to pay to have private duty policemen there. They pay, not the taxpayers.
Mr. Moody?
Art Moody, 3 Thompson Road. I think the problem here is that it started, the Church Street area wanted to get out of the business seasonal, so the planning board sponsored an article to make them RCS. And what that did, when it passed town meeting, was to grandfather in parking lots, including the Catholic Church on Church Street. It's a parking lot that the town rents every year for the last 20 years. And a lot that's west of Brown Avenue.